Hello all and welcome to my presentation. So as you can tell, this isn't audio in a Prezi. The main reason for this is because when I tried to put my audio into Prezi, it kept distorting the audio to the point where you couldn't hear anything and it sounded like a massive screeching noise. And I felt like that would be a bad idea to include in it. So to get around that problem, I made this video. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the presentation. If you want to afterwards, you can click through the Prezi to see if it matches up. Howdy, today I would like to talk to you about Studio Ghibli and how they made animation more human. So first we're going to take an overview of Ghibli and its history, as well as taking a look at the studio itself, followed by talking about the two founding fathers who contributed to Ghibli's success, and as well as how Ghibli contributed to the animation industry. And then we're going to end off with how the film is unique, or how each individual Ghibli film is unique compared to the mass audience. Then just a conclusion of everything else. So, an overview of Ghibli. Ghibli was founded in 1986 and is still going on as a studio and is located in Kagenai, Tokyo, Japan. There are 20 and counting animated films coming from the studio, and it's changed the global view of animation from being something usually depicted towards children to a greater audience to tell deeper and more meaningful stories. Right here is what the main studio looks like. It's a slight modern design with a lot of overgrowth and just a lot of green because Miyazaki, one of the main directors, is very fond of nature. And then here's the logo that was adapted later on down the line. Now let's move on to the founding fathers of Ghibli. So the two founding fathers initially met at Toei Animation and worked together for several years before moving on to Nippon Animation a few years later, where they continued to work together and develop, following their friendship to the point where they created their own studio, Ghibli, in 1986. The two creators are Hayao Miyazaki and Isao Takahata. Now, here's a picture of Miyazaki. Miyazaki's work is mostly fantasy based. He's a director, producer, screenwriter, animator, author, manga artist, and basically everything else that you can imagine dealing with animation or manga. He worked on films such as Laputa, Castle in the Sky, My Neighbor Totoro, Kiki's Delivery Service, Porco Rosso, Princess Mononoke, Spirited Away, House Moving Castle, Ponyo, and The Wind Rises. All of these films have been made from the first one being in 1986 to the most recent one being in 2013. Over the past decade or so, Miyazaki has retired constantly to the point where he's on his seventh re-entry into the field as he's working on a new project dedicated to his grandson. Now, let's focus on Takahata. Here's a picture of Takahata himself. His work is mostly based in reality, and he's a director, animator, screenwriter, producer, and technically for a long period of time was Miyazaki's senior. A lot of Miyazaki's work, for instance like the art style of a majority of his films, were inspired by Takahata's own personal animation and art style, which can be seen in his first film, Grave of the Fireflies, which then progressed to Only Yesterday, changing his color palettes, then to Pompoko, which is a bit out there but had a lot of reality set ideas in there. Then a complete art style change to My Neighbors the Yamadas. And then with his most recent film of 2013, The Tale of Princess Kaguya. Similarly to Miyazaki, he is a master producer and produced a lot of Miyazaki's work, but then in 1988 decided to make his own film, Grave of the Fireflies. A lot of his films aren't really popular to say because he's no Miyazaki level of popularity, but a lot of his films hit different targeted audiences, especially Only Yesterday, which was very popular around middle-aged women in Japan because it was a very good story to connect to of flashing back to the past and desires for the future. He also doesn't like restricting himself to a set art style and making it so each film looks different than the last, which can be seen in My Neighbors the Yamadas and The Tale of the Princess Kaguya, which are very simplistic in nature but overall allow for deep interpretation and variation to the animation styles. Without the two founding fathers ever meeting at Toei Animation, they wouldn't have gone this far and Ghibli wouldn't have been made. And these two have influenced all the other directors and producers in how the film should be made and continue to inspire young animators in the industry. So let's move on to actually figure out what makes a Ghibli film unique or different compared to all the other animated films coming out of Japan. One of the main differences is almost everything is done by hand, which is an old art style that has been void for quite some time, especially in the animation scene. From the backgrounds to the inking of the frames, which only recently has been changed to fit a different medium and correct colors and apply to the digital screen. It is all done traditionally, and there's very little CGI alterations. Recently, there's been an adjustment to this as an animated series directed by Miyazaki's son used a lot of CGI in it, and Miyazaki's recent short film, which is being adapted into a full-length feature film, for The Caterpillar, is almost completely CGI, but with a traditional art style that reflects Miyazaki's work, which the backgrounds and the process of making the backgrounds can be seen in this video, but for the sake of this presentation and for the time limit, I've decided just to leave it up there. And then here's Miyazaki himself working on the storyboard and art process from a very important documentary in the series. Miyazaki and Takahata Ghibli film also is unique based off of the extreme level of detail and attention to each individual thing in the surrounding world in each film. This can be seen in Miyazaki's work, specifically in how walk cycles and very mundane activities are animated. Each individual step is animated differently than the last, creating the unique humanistic look to actual motion in real life. This is also seen in the background design, as everything is traditionally created and fits to the actual world that it's set to. Each individual detail to the minimal pixel is specifically stylized to look as if it's real and you can actually live there. And here's a video specifically demonstrating how much detail goes into the work and focusing on the food, because food plays a massive part in a Ghibli film. Usually eaten with people, and it connects them in different ways and allows for different moments to be made. But it's also a moment so unique and untargeted in several animation industries, or projects to say, because of the level of detail between each bite, each slice, and everything in between is so unique and different than the remaining one, and none of the animation is looped. So, in conclusion, Studio Ghibli has been a forerunner for several years, even before Ghibli existed, for creating animated projects that push the medium. Their level of detail and focus in the real world, trying to interpret it the way to fit their style, is unique and constantly inspires studios to try to replicate it. And since this is a recording instead of an actual presentation, if there are any questions, leave in the comment section down below, and I will try to answer them and maybe make a response video targeting each individual film and exactly how it contributed to the overall animation industry. Thank you for joining me for this project, and hopefully you enjoyed it.